Ignition sequence starts.
Good morning, and welcome to a view inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston. These members of the Orbit 2 team of flight controllers are monitoring station systems and helping the Expedition 65 crew members with their work near the end of a busy week on orbit. Commander Aki Hoshide and his crewmates have spent time keeping up with routine station maintenance as well as the latest groundbreaking science research in space, but they also suited up to move their Crew Dragon spacecraft to a new docking port and monitored the launch of a new module bound for the Russian segment of the station.
Houston Station on Space to Ground.
Welcome to Space to Ground. I'm Shaniqua Vereen. Relocations, launches, and undockings. Oh my, it was a busy week in space and on the ground.
Engine start and liftoff. A module named Science takes flight to the International Space Station.
On Wednesday, July 21st, the Russian multi-purpose laboratory module, Nauka, was launched into space from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Nauka will serve as a new science facility, docking port, and spacewalk airlock for future operations. Upon arrival, Nauka will automatically link up to the port of the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment. That Earth-facing port is currently home for the Russian Pirs airlock. Pirs, along with the Russian Progress 77 cargo craft, will soon undock from the station, making room for the new module. Check nasa.gov for the latest information to watch live. Also this week, the SpaceX Crew 2 astronauts Shane Kimbrough, Megan MacArthur, Aki Hoshide, and Thomas Pesquet boarded Crew Dragon Endeavour for a short flight. The spacecraft undocked from the forward port of the station's Harmony module. About 50 minutes later, the spacecraft docked to the station again, this time at the station's space-facing port. The relocation freed up Harmony's forward port for the docking of Boeing's CST-100 Starliner spacecraft, scheduled for Saturday, July 31st. And if you're looking for a good conversation about the upcoming Starliner mission, we invite you to listen to this week's Houston We Have a Podcast. This week's special guest, Boeing Starliner Flight Director Bob Dempsey, discusses the upcoming Uncrewed Orbital Flight Test 2 mission to the International Space Station for NASA's Commercial Crew program. Go to nasa.gov/podcast to find this and other NASA podcasts. The podcast is also available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and SoundCloud. Back inside the station, the science continues, including cool flames investigation with gases. Cool flames, flames that burn at extremely low temperatures, are nearly impossible to create in Earth's gravity. However, they are easily produced in the microgravity environment of the International Space Station. In June, aboard station, spherical non-premixed cool flames were observed burning gaseous fuels for the very first time. Non-premixed cool flames, created when fuel and oxidizer are not mixed before reacting, were discovered in 2012 aboard the space station during the flame extinguishment studies. Cool flames are important to study because engine technology is trending toward lower temperatures. The results of this investigation could lead to cleaner, more efficient internal combustion engines. That's Space to Ground for this week. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week.
The International Space Station had another 20th anniversary this week. July 20th, 2001 was the day the first spacewalk was made out of the Quest airlock, opening the way for station crew members to do the assembly, maintenance, and upgrade that have kept the station operating in such good shape for all these years. The first astronaut to make a spacewalk from Quest was NASA's Mike Gernhardt.
So, wow, that was a huge experience in my life. We worked for many years to get ready for that. And then we were sitting in the crew lock, which is this part of the airlock that goes to vacuum. We were supposed to depressurize in 30 minutes. That was the theoretical thing, but they missed the calculation somewhat and it took over an hour. So we're kind of anxious. And then the Capcom Dan Burbank whispered in my ear, "This is the anniversary of the first moonwalk." And I did not know that, and we weren't expecting to go out the door on that date. And so anyhow, all those thoughts were running through my mind. And then as I went out the door, it's very different than the shuttle. I had done spacewalks from the shuttle, and you have the payload bay underneath you. You feel like you have a floor under you. And I came out first, and the hatch of the ISS airlock points nadir, which means toward Earth. So as you look out the hatch, you feel like you're falling from 250 miles. And so that was a big rush. Everything we do at NASA is a great team effort, and I worked with one of the greatest teams at NASA to develop this airlock and the pre-brief protocol. And when I went out the door, I had all their names on my cuff checklist, and I really showed them my appreciation for all the teamwork that it took. And it was really quite an amazing effort. And when you look at it, the space station was assembled from spacewalks. It's maintained from spacewalks. We've had to change out batteries and do all kinds of maintenance. If you can't get out the door efficiently, then you can't do all these spacewalks. And so the implementation of the airlock with the pre-brief protocol that was basically like 2.5 hours, which was actually very low compared to what we thought we'd have to do. And then all the little tools that we developed for that mission, things like the crew lock bags that you carry your tools in. I worked with the crew and thermal systems guys to design those. And then I had actually invented this device called the body restraint tether that comes off your waist, and you use that to hold onto a handhold. And for anything but really high force tasks, that's enough to restrain yourself. And so, and we honestly probably couldn't have built station as well as we did without that. It feels great. So all those techniques that we really developed to do spacewalks from the space station have been used again and again and again to great success. So the spacewalks on the moon will be very different than on ISS. On ISS, we're doing some detailed maintenance, changing out battery packs and things of this nature, whereas on the moon, we're there to explore and to take advantage of the human brain and judgment and their hands to do exploration. So the task will involve science. We'll still have some maintenance to do on the rover. There'll still be some of that, but your daily spacewalks will be focused on the science.
Four of the Expedition 65 crew members, representing 3 different countries, flew on Crew 2 to the one and only International Space Station. Before launch, we got them all to stand still for some rapid-fire questions. Here's the straight skinny on their favorite foods, colors, and decades, their pet peeves and guilty pleasures, and who inspires them.
Tacos. Cheese and dairy. I know it's cliche for a Frenchman, but it's true.
Ramen noodles.
Cookies.
Favorite color is blue.
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 Orange.
Haagen-Dazs strawberry.
Pistachio.
Mint chip.
Plain vanilla, low quality fast food ice cream.
The Princess Bride.
Favorite movie is Proxima. It's named after my first mission. It's the story of a female astronaut, European, French woman going to space. Anything with Bourne or Bond?
It's hard to say. A couple of Japanese mystery books.
Extreme ownership.
I love books, so I can't choose just one.
I don't have any. I read a lot of books, and I think if I had a favorite one, I would stop reading. But like every new one is my favorite book, and that's what I keep reading.
I like skiing.
Basketball.
Rugby.
Golf.
I don't dance.
I've been here long enough, not falling for it.
The moonwalk. Easy, but not really. That's the single ladies choreography.
The 90s were pretty great.
That's when I fell in love, got married.
That's when I was in college, and the music was really great.
Kids were born in the 90s. I had some great jobs of flying Apache helicopters and jumping out of airplanes.
Every decade is the one we're in. I think things get better.
Mean drivers.
Inefficiency.
I don't have anything. Nothing bothers me.
I do have a superpower, and it's to make kids happy. Sometimes, they want a selfie or an autograph, and you make them happy, and I think that's a really cool superpower to have.
To fly.
I would have to say fly.
Flying, obviously.
Rom-coms. I never watch movies, but sometimes when I do, I end up with, feel-good, happy ending love stories.
Ice cream.
Well, chocolate, but I don't actually feel all that guilty about it.
Parent.
Being a parent,
Parent, for sure.
it's not even close.
My wife.
Friends and families.
My husband.
I'd say my partner in life. She's the funniest person in the world.
My dad.
Amanda Gorman.
I think my parents are really normal people who takes responsibilities at the local level and try to do the good things.
Coffee.
T.
Coffee, definitely.
T.
Build a sandcastle.
I think I'd hop on a rover and go cruising around all day.
Look for footprints.
Probably do backflips. I was on a parabolic flight with Mars gravity and moon gravity. I can do a double backflip in moon gravity, but I'm not quite sure on Mars, but I would try it.
I think it's Russian language, and one of my former crewmates told me, for Russian language, the first 10 years are the hardest, so I think that's pretty accurate.
I think the volume and the variety is what makes it hard, but that's also what makes it great.
Sugar.
I do. I do have a call sign, but I cannot tell you what it is and why.
Leave it there.
The exterior of the International Space Station provides a great place for science. Over on the Kibo Laboratories exposed facility, there's a package pointing a laser light down on tree canopies on the planet to study Earth's ecosystem for scientists who want to learn more about how it is changing.
Shining laser light on Earth's forests. Presented by Science at NASA. The International Space Station, or ISS, is sporting a new light fixture. The Global Ecosystem Dynamics Investigation, or GEDI, will beam down laser light on Earth from the orbiting laboratory to reveal more about our environment and how it is changing. NASA's GEDI sends laser pulses into tree canopies and precisely measures the light reflected back. The timing and intensity of light that bounces back to GEDI's telescope will reveal the height and density of trees and vegetation, and the vertical arrangement of the leaves and branches within the overall canopy. Dr. Ralph Dabaya, GEDI principal investigator at the University of Maryland, says, "This instrument will map forests in high resolution and 3 dimensions, revolutionizing the way researchers monitor them. Forested areas are an important part of our planet. Not only do forests provide a habitat for many species and a source of raw materials for human use, such as paper and lumber, they also play a key role in the Earth's carbon cycle. Deforestation and forest degradation, in addition to other types of forest disturbances, such as fires and insect outbreaks, lead to increases in atmospheric carbon dioxide. Forest regrowth sucks that carbon back down into trees and soils. Knowing how forests grow and change over time can allow us to better understand the contribution that forests make to Earth's carbon cycle and help people better manage this important resource. GEDI is the first spaceborne instrument designed specifically to perform sustained mapping of the spatial distribution of the carbon content of forests. Dabaya notes, one of the most poorly quantified components of the carbon cycle is the net balance between forest disturbance and regrowth. GEDI will help scientists fill in this missing piece by revealing the vertical structure of the forest, information we really can't get with sufficient accuracy any other way. GEDI will provide scientists with insights into the amount of carbon stored in forests. When combined with current and historical records of changes captured by Earth-orbiting satellites, such as Landsat, this information will enhance the ability of researchers to identify changes happening across our planet. Researchers also will incorporate GEDI's observations, along with those of the Ecostress instrument on the station, with data from other current and future Earth-observing sensors. These data will address important questions about relationships between forest structure, function, composition, and changes in carbon content. Combining all of these data will allow researchers to gain an unprecedented understanding of ecosystem dynamics and the role plants and trees play in Earth's global carbon cycle. These new insights could be used in turn to improve models for forecasting future ecosystem changes, atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations, and climate. JEDI was launched to the station aboard SpaceX CRS-16 on December 5, 2018. For more about how NASA uses the power of light to understand our world and beyond, visit science.nasa.gov.
Those who see the Earth from the International Space Station often say it provides them with a new appreciation for the planet. Well, many of the pictures they take of that planet are also providing raw material for other experiments. The Avian Migration Aerial Surface Space Project takes advantage of thousands of images captured by astronauts to give people an understanding of the migrations many birds undertake across the planet.
I flew as a Canadian astronaut on the mission STS-42, Space Shuttle Discovery, back in January of 1992. Currently, my role as president of the foundation that bears my name is to conduct some research into the migratory corridor, habitats, and behaviors of certain species of migratory birds. We've been trying to utilize photography to put together a compelling reason why people need to pay attention to these very fragile organisms and their fragile environments. We think that doing it at 3 different levels, the aerial, surface, and space, will provide the different perspective. So it's as if we were down at carpet level with a magnifying glass on the surface, and then we get up and we see the patterns a little bit differently. And then we get into space and see this whole corridor, but we see different patterns that we didn't even know existed. So the space station can provide us these images so we can actually construct part of that flight, a part of that corridor of one of these species.
Growing up as a Canadian, Dr. Bundar was one of my heroes. She was the first female astronaut that we had in Canada, and I always kind of looked up to her because she was also a scientist and a physician. And there she was offering me the chance to participate in this beautiful project. And I loved because it fit with my hopes of sharing from space station my love of the environment. One of the challenges of taking photos of the Earth from space station is that we're going pretty fast. You know, we're going around the world in about an hour and a half, flying at 5 miles a second. And as you get to the cupola, get your camera ready, you're looking at previous images, satellite imagery, trying to wrap your mind around what you're trying to see. And then you look forward towards, the limb of the Earth as the Earth the steam is coming towards you. It's coming pretty fast. And you gotta identify it on the horizon as it approaches, because you have maybe just a few seconds as you're flying over that location. And then you look back and maybe you have a few more chances as you're flying away from it, but that's it. The whole thing lasts, way less than a minute. But kind of chasing the right frame is a bit of an art because you only have one chance.
To date, we have at least, I'd say, somewhere between 25,000 images provided to us from NASA.
This was one of the larger imagery projects that we've worked on. Typically, we work with researchers or scientists that are looking at a few different locations on Earth, maybe no more than 10. And this ended up being about 50 different locations on Earth that we wanted both nadir-looking shots, which is a straight-down-looking shot, as well as Earth limb shots. We worked with various crew members over the years to take a lot of these photos, but we also reached back into our database of over 4 million astronaut photos just to see what already existed. We get excited when external groups seek out these types of imagery projects with us, especially scientific and research groups.
Space exploration really offers us an amazing perspective on our home. And I think this project is a beautiful example of how we can kind of scratch our heads, take a few steps back, look at the big picture.
It's about taking that creativity that were offered in space, combining that with the aerial shots of getting closer and closer to when they put their feet on the ground, to me is an extraordinary way of trying to bring together this emotional story of the importance of habitat protection so that these beautiful, magnificent creatures that fly the way we do in space can survive on our planet for future generations.
The job of an astronaut on the International Space Station includes being a laboratory assistant for scientists who are doing research in space, as well as doing needed maintenance to keep the station operating safely and efficiently. But they also have to keep themselves in good shape so they can do all that other work. In this demonstration video, astronaut Joe Acaba talks about exercise in space.
Hey there, my name is Joe Acaba, and I'm living and working on the International Space Station as part of Expedition 53. One of the best parts about living on the space station is being able to float. Just like you walk from place to place throughout your day, we float from place to place throughout our day. However, we have learned that the same thing that allows us to float, microgravity, is hard on our bodies over time. Our muscles and bones are made of millions of tiny units called cells, and these cells can have problems in microgravity. Up here on the station, bones and muscles no longer have to support the weight of our bodies, so they get weaker. Astronauts could develop something called muscle atrophy, where our muscles become weak from lack of use. Each bone in your body is made of cells too. A healthy bone has more density than an unhealthy bone. Weakened bones can lead to a disease called osteoporosis. Fortunately, our scientists at NASA have figured out one way to keep astronauts healthy and strong. It's called exercise. Let's take a look at how astronauts exercise in space. This machine here is the Advanced Resistive Exercise Device, or we call it ARED. It simulates free weight exercises in normal gravity to work all the major muscle groups. ARED's primary goal is to maintain our muscle strength and mass so that we have less of a recovery period when we land back on Earth. All right, so there's looking at lifting. But what about a little cardio? We have a treadmill for that. Let's check it out. Staying physically active helps both astronauts in space and humans on the ground to stay healthy. And it prevents muscle atrophy and osteoporosis. Now you can try the activity connected to this video to learn more about muscle and bone cells. I'm Joe Acaba, and I hope you enjoyed learning about exercise on the International Space Station. We'll see you next time.
$244 different human beings so far have had the opportunity to look down at the Earth from the windows of the International Space Station. Some of them, like NASA's Tracy Caldwell Dyson, have made more than one visit, and she is one of the many who say that that experience has changed their perspective on the planet.
My first look at the Earth from that vantage point was on ascent in my wrist mirror, looking at the aft window behind me, knowing that I was the first one that had to get out of their seat and film our external tank falling away. That was my first job, aside from all the monitoring that I had to do. And so my view of it was very fleeting and very technical. It was background to the task that I had at hand, and that was pointing a camera at an external tank so that it could be analyzed. Then when we got into orbit, we had a very fast-paced mission, which all space shuttle missions were. You had 10 to 12 days of fast-paced work. And it was my commander, Scott Kelly, who carved out 90 minutes of entire orbit on flight day 10. And he said to the rookies, the three of us, I want you guys all in that window, and I don't want you to move. And he already pre-coordinated it, got the lights turned off on the station so we could see everything in its grandeur. And that was the first moment that I had to really soak it in, and discovered a lot of things about my reaction to that view in that relatively short period of time. And then, of course, there was my space station flight where I lived up there for 6 months, and every night that I could, I was planted in that cupola, much like the picture shows, and gazing at it. And there wasn't a single regret I had about the time I spent there. In fact, it almost, I dare say, grieved me to think about how in the world am I going to describe this? There's no words. There's no picture I could take to do it justice. There's no watercolors that I could put on paper to come close to the vividness, the ever-changing picture that I see staring at this planet. Everything from the colors to what changes the atmosphere goes through, depending on where the sun angle is and whether the moon's in the view or not, to just how fast we're going over the surface of it and the way shadows are changing. You could see the same landmass over a period of 2 weeks and it looks completely different because of that. To then looking at the stars and the blackness, a black that nothing here on Earth ever can replicate. And then you look at the space station around you and you're like, this is amazing. And all the people who are a part of this structure that are, I know, either at their desks, creating the next great marvel, or they're sitting in mission control, controlling everything I see. And that's where it kind of hits you that you are but a small fraction of the human race that will ever get to see this the way it is right now.
If you want another look at any of the stories you saw today, you can find them all on YouTube and Facebook, along with a lot of other great features on a wide variety of topics from NASA. If you're looking for good conversation about human spaceflight, check out Houston We Have a Podcast, our weekly show talking to folks involved in all areas of space exploration. Today, Gary Jordan talks with NASA Flight Director Bob Dempsey and gets up to date on the plans for the upcoming mission of the Starliner, the commercial crew vehicle from Boeing poised to make its second test flight. Go to nasa.gov/podcasts for this week's episode and all the previous episodes, and the full library of all the NASA podcasts, which are all also on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and SoundCloud.